3 in a row with a live Six Rings in Football Things podcast here on WEI for Odyssey Sports and 2400 Sports. I am Mike Kadlick. He is Andy Jumbo Hart. And today's the day, Andy. Today's the day it really starts. Today is the day it really begins. Yes, it started, but today it becomes official. Legal tampering is over at 4 p.m. Contracts can actually be signed. The ink can dry. No one can back out. It's the start of the new league year. And so the Patriots have at the top of the league in cap space still, because while they've retained a lot of their players, and the latest being Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche, Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne, they've yet to make that splash. And I think the big news, and what we're going to do today is we're going to go through, top of the line news and things that are happening around the league with the Patriots. And if you guys have any questions and want to throw anything in the chat, we'll sort of let you guys guide the conversation as well. But we're going to start with that Calvin Ridley news, because that's top of mind. That's what's happening with the Patriots. And it is that as of now, they have an offer out for Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley has not necessarily responded to them. He's basically left them on red. And the story goes is that he's waiting for 4 p.m. with the Jacksonville Jaguars, because that, there's stipulations in the trade when he was sent from Atlanta that it turns in from a second-round pick to a third-round pick. And so it does him favors, it lets him get leverage, and it does the Jaguars favors as well. So as we sit here right now, Andy, 1 p.m. on Wednesday, do you think the Patriots have any chance at all at landing Calvin Ridley when the league year opens at 4 p.m.?
No, I do not. All of the people that are reporting on it, Jonathan Jones, CBS, Schefter's audio from, I think, last night's 6 o'clock Sports Center, where he's like, and it will be Jacksonville. And he kept emphasizing, it was like he was saying he's officially signed, but he's not officially signed, because if he officially signs, then there'll be a grievance filed by the Falcons because they'll want the second. So everybody's trying to pretend he's not going to Jacksonville, but I think all signs point to him going to Jacksonville. And I'll be honest, superficially, it sucks. Because he, as Rich Keefe would say, he'd be your number one wide receiver. Absolutely. I don't actually think he's a number one wide receiver. I think he's a really good 2, but he could be a bridge number 1. And if you get one of the guys we like in the draft, whoever that is, and, he plays the number 1 role for a year or 2, and then that guy takes over, and Ridley either is phased out or is his, running buddy kind of.
Right.
But it's not like a make or break miss. It's just, I think the expectations that people had, and whether they meant to or not, I don't really give a flying fandango, because I've been arguing with some people about that. They set expectations. Their GM said weaponize, and their head coach said burn some cash. 1,000% we're bringing in talent. They haven't lived up to either of those comments. They've weaponized nothing. Gibson's not a weapon. I like Austin Hooper. I actually, back in the day, I can remember doing the draft breakdown when Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry were coming in the league, and I was like, why would you take Hunter Henry in the first round when you can get Austin Hooper on day 2 and he's just as good? I remember thinking that. So I have no problem with these moves individually, but you created an expectation, and you're not living up to the expectation. You, and I want to emphasize that, not you, Mike Kadlick, but you, Elliot Wolf, and you, Gerard Mayo. Yeah. And you know what? You just made me think when you said there's been no splash. Elliot Wolf is a good Olympic diver. He's dived right into free agency. And you know how they always say, if there's no splash, it's a good dive. They cut through the water. He's cutting through free agency. He's winning contracts. He's getting Onwenu for less than I thought, and Henry for less than I thought, and all these guys. That's great.
Right.
But is anybody excited? Are they a better team? Though I still go back to, I think Austin Hooper was the first move that makes them a better team, because I think he's better than Mike Gesicki. I think you can argue they have 2 tight ends this year instead of 1.5. Other than that, nope.
And I agree. I think them setting those expectations makes it look that much worse, because, and our friend Mike Giardi did it again on Andrew Callahan's podcast and said that they're bringing back the guys on the 4-13 team, and he's getting dragged for that again. And while I get the premise,
true,
you do, but you do have to retain some people, and they have retained the good players. But you're right in that those blocks, those open spots in quarterback and tackle and wide receiver, they haven't upgraded those. And those three positions are the reason they were 4-13. So they've made the right move so far. They just, again, they haven't made that splash yet. And the splash felt like it was going to be a wide receiver. Josina Anderson reported that they were in on the wide receiver market. They obviously said burn some cash. They obviously said weaponize, and they haven't done that yet. And to burning cash and weaponizing isn't drafting A.D. Mitchell at the bottom of the first round. That's taking a shot on a guy for low money to see if you can develop a wide receiver eventually. Like, that's not a splash. That's just a smart move. And so I still think they need to hit the wide receiver market. We'll get to Tyron Smith later. We'll get to, whatever else they can do in a little bit. But that's sort of my question now. And I'm curious as to where you think they go from here and if any of these are reasonable, because you hear that T. Higgins requested trade. You hear that he's on the market. And I know they can sort of start talking about trades now, but trades can't become official until Wednesday today. So you wonder if now it starts to ramp up. T. Higgins is supposedly on the block. The Chargers are apparently, dangling out Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and then the ends as well, and Bosa and Mack. But what are your thoughts on the trade market? And do you think they should go get one of those Chargers guys? Do you think they're better off getting T. Higgins? At this point, without Calvin Ridley, are they better off just waiting for the draft? Because the wide receiver market set itself up to fail a little bit, because not set itself up to fail, but the guys in Higgins and Evans and Pittman all went home. So the best guy was Calvin Ridley. And like you said, he's not even really a true one. So what is their best option at wide receiver now moving forward?
So I have no problem. There's two sort of plans of attack, and I think they tie into I just did a hit with our friends Gresh and Fourier with Lou Merloni sitting in.
Ooh.
And I think it's important to know, and we don't know this, or I don't necessarily, what is the timeline for Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo? And how does that, I think that ties in, if you tell me they think Drake May is going to be the pick at 3, and they think Drake May is raw. He might not play till late in the year. Maybe he sits this year. And if that's the timeline, then I think you go young, like you said. I think, Kendrick Bourne will be back either to start the year or whatever. Demario Douglas is here. Maybe you draft 2 receivers and add 1 lower level veteran. I don't know who that would be, but a cost-effective
Tyler Boyd, Hollywood Brown, or
Hollywood Brown might be a guy with some upside that I don't think will be too costly. And you're kind of going the Packers route and say, we're going to throw 3 young receivers out there. And we know it's going to take a little bit. We know this is a multi-year plan because our quarterback's going to take a little bit. We also need to roll in what they're doing at left tackle. Is there going to be a young left tackle? And it might just be a youth movement. The flip side is, if you think it can be quicker and you think Drake May can be CJ Stroud or one of these guys, Mac Jones as a rookie, and you think there can be an accelerated timeline without risk, without damage, then I would absolutely look into the trade market. Now, so we have the trade market's got a few different layers. One would be T. Higgins. I think that's a legitimate, although most of the feeling out of Cincinnati is they're not trading him. Mike Brown doesn't do what Mike Brown doesn't want to do. So good luck, T. Higgins.
They have to win the trade. And so it's going to cost a lot for Higgins. Right.
Which I can't imagine that's the 34th pick. I think that would have to be a first round pick to get him, which I'm not opposed to next year. I'm not trading you 3, but if you want to say a future first round pick, which concerns me because next year could be a top 10 pick too. You may be trading a really high pick.
Especially if you bridge with Brissett, you don't put the quarterback in just yet, and then you end up at 4 and 5 wins again.
Right. But I would absolutely kick the tires. I've been on T. Higgins for a couple years now. And then there's these other names that I don't know if this is internet fiction kind of stuff. We've had these ideas that A.J. Brown might be available, that Brendan Ayuk might be available.
Ayuk's different than Brown, though, I think.
Can I just play along?
Sure.
If it's on the internet, can't you play with it?
No, but I'm saying A.J. Brown seems like random fodder, where Brandon Ayuk seems like you could actually go get that guy. Because
then I want him. Then I would trade. I would
Yep.
trade next year's one for Brandon Ayuk. I mean, you're talking about a guy who averaged 18 yards a catch this year in that offense. I know, surrounded by a lot of weapons, but that's the reality. If you go get a guy, you're taking him out of a situation and you don't know what he's going to be as your number 1. I don't know. I mean, I think Ayuk has a chance to be a true number 1 receiver.
Agreed.
And so I would be intrigued by that if I could get that deal done. back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. As I said, 18 yards a catch. I think 1,300 yards this year. I think he's like 15 touchdowns total the last couple of years. Cortland Sutton is another guy, double-digit touchdowns. Has had a lot to deal with in Denver. Probably a cheaper option there to trade for him. I know your guy, Jerry Jeudy, already went. I'm not really sure why they weren't necessarily in on that. I think
that didn't take a lot, right?
No, that felt like that would have made some sense. But I do think it's important, and let's swing back around like the tackle position. I feel like if you sign Tyron Smith, then maybe you are trading for a wide receiver and you are trying to talk yourself into, we can put together a competitive, productive offense this year. If not, if it's not Tyron Smith and Jonah Williams at tackle, if you're planning on starting a rookie left tackle, a rookie quarterback, and a rookie receiver, well, good luck.
So, I mean, I look at, and I want to get to Tyron Smith and Jonah Williams in a second. But as far as the receiver market, right? Like the Packers strategy where they took the three young guys and Christian Watkins, or was it Watkins?
Watson.
Is that his name? Watson. Geez. But then they had the two other guys in Reed and losing my. Yeah, they got a lot of guys over there. So again,
we got a problem here. If I'm the guy who knows the names, we got a major
seriously. But it's funny. I couldn't think of them off the top of my head. But all three of those guys have been solid for that Packers team, and that worked for Jordan Love, who was able to sit a couple seasons, and he does have a little bit of pedigree and experience, I guess, under his belt to then help bring those guys up. Where if you bring Drake May in next year, I want a more proven wide receiver to catch passes from. I don't want these, A.D. Mitchell and Ladd McConkey, and you bring in three guys, right, who still don't really have the experience mixed in with Kendrick Bourne and Demario Douglas, who really only has 14 games under his belt because I think he was hurt a couple times, right? So I'm still in on the wide receiver market, and I don't think it's crazy to assume that they could still go make a splash for a guy like Higgins, a guy like Ayuk, a guy like Cortland Sutton, and maybe there's someone that's under the radar too, because a lot of these trades, they kind of came out of nowhere. Like Stephon Diggs, I know he kind of has always put up a fight about where he's been, but I didn't think anyone actually thought Minnesota was going to trade him, and they did. Tyreek Hill was Patrick Mahomes' number one guy, and the reason they won a Super Bowl and the reason they were a high-flying offense, and they traded him. And so even A.J. Brown in Tennessee, that happened on draft night out of the blue. John Robinson just pulled the trigger. And so there could be something under the radar that they can go get, and maybe it's cautious optimism, but I still wouldn't put it past them. And I think that's what you have to do here. You need to give that rookie quarterback a go-to guy as soon as he gets in the system, as soon as he gets in the building. I think that's good. I think that's something that is going to help develop him even further.
And history tells us that a guy who is a free agent is not a number one wide receiver.
Bingo.
He just isn't.
Right.
Those guys are either drafted or traded for.
Who was the kid from Detroit? Kenny Golladay. He was supposed to be a number one wide receiver, and the Giants paid him buku bucks, and he sucked ever since.
And he was not.
Right.
That's the reality. We're still waiting for an example of the Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, whatever you want to call it thing, with a true free agent. It hasn't happened. Because another guy, DK Metcalf from Joey Aguirre.
Whatever that.
What about a trade for DK Metcalf? I'd put him in that category. I'd put him in a tradable number one wide receiver category. Because guess what? All of these guys, you can't. It's very hard to want a number one receiver and want a guy that's like the perfect citizen. Like these guys, for whatever it is, what it is. Like it's kind of like the number one corners for the most part. They're a little off. They're a little crazy. They're a little mercurial. They got attitudes. They're divas. They want the ball. So somebody might say, oh, DK, he's kind of he might be kind of a dink. He's also a dink that can jump out the building, who can run by you, who can run over you, who can flex over you. Like he's a legitimate thing. Like they were talking about, was it Mayo who was talking about like guys that other defenses have to think about, have to double, have to care about?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to game plan for
Metcalf. You game plan for DK Metcalf. And I think you care about Calvin Ridley, but I don't know that you're over the top worried that Calvin Ridley is going to embarrass you as a defense, is going to. So, and that's that line. And you're right. If they don't get Ridley and the trade market doesn't, and I don't rule out your idea of like, we didn't really think that guy was available and you swoop in kind of trade. But then, yeah, I guess you do just have to go draft and try to. Now, the timeline I'm talking about doesn't marry up with Jordan Love's timeline because you said it. Jordan Love got to sit, become a veteran. Even though he hadn't really played, he's a veteran. He's been around the business, the world, the huddle. Like, you don't have that really. You might have Brissett for a couple months, but reality is you're probably going to be marrying up young QB to young wide receiver. And I'm not saying that can't work. I'm not saying that at all. Like, Cincinnati's kind of done that.
It worked with Burrow. Higgins was young and Chase was a rookie. Right.
So I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying there's some youthful risk, I guess, with that plan.
So before we get into, I want to get into the tackle market, Tyron Smith, Jonah Williams. I have a question for you on the Chargers trade market too, but we have a little bit of a report. I don't want to call it a report. It's a Michael Lombardi nugget, so take that with a grain of salt. But he was on Pat McAfee earlier this afternoon and said, the message the Jaguars are sending by signing Gabe Davis and Devin Duvernay is that they're not bringing Calvin Ridley back. He has a market, and I know that New England wants him. So
not bringing him back?
Yeah, he says he doesn't think Jacksonville's bringing him back, and he thinks that them signing those two veterans in Gabe Davis and Devin Duvernay says that they're not bringing him back. Now, again, take that for what you will. Maybe Ridley's using Jacksonville to get more money from New England, and he's using I can wait till Wednesday, and they're gonna sign me and trust me. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's flipped, and maybe it's not what we think it is, but. So that's something to throw into the ether. Again, Lombardi has a patchy, if we will, track record. Sometimes he's on things, sometimes he's not. But take it for what it's worth. That's what he said. So before we get into the tackles now, go ahead.
But the implication there is the Patriots may get Calvin Ridley at their price. That's the implication there. Like he's trying to manipulate the situation, the trade for his own purposes. But in reality, he has a Patriots offer on the table that he doesn't love, but he might have to take it. Now, if I were him, I might pull a Scott Boras and wait this out a little bit. Just see what happens.
I saw you tweet that the other day, and 30 minutes before I was going to say the same thing. Is Scott Boras Calvin Ridley's agent, and just wait this thing out.
Right. Wait it out a little bit. Now, I don't know how far you're willing to go, and money starts to dry up, and we've just talked about it. He's not that good. Schultz just said he would be surprised if he went back to Jacksonville. Boy, the page has turned here.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little
Jacksonville.
We're getting a little like you said, the tide's turning a bit here on the Calvin Ridley market, it seems. These are the insiders that Schultz has been pretty good. Jordan Schultz blocked me on Twitter a couple years ago because I talked bleep about him on there one time because I didn't think he was getting everything right, and so I tweeted it. All of a sudden, he's all over the place for Bleacher Report. So give Jordan Schultz his due. He knows what's going on. So
we'll see.
Again, we'll see. Take it with a grain of salt. We have a couple hours until things become official at 4 p.m. So I want to talk tackle market. I don't need a ton on this, Andy, from you, but with that Chargers market and the Chargers trying to sell off some guys to get under the cap, do you have any interest at all in the DNs, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, or are you passing on those guys?
Not really. No. Yeah. I mean, if I was going to do that, I would have wanted to be in on the Brian Burns thing, and I would have.
Yeah, that's right. We had that last time. Yeah.
Again, timelines to what end? Aging, injury-prone players. So I would say the same things about the receivers. Is Keenan Allen good? Could Keenan Allen have a good year next year? Yeah. To what end? Did I not develop a rookie that could have helped Drake May in year 2 and year 3 because Keenan Allen's on the field and he's getting the ball, and that's great. He might catch 80, 90 balls. Again, to what end? Have I?
Well, and so, right. If you're bringing Keenan Allen in for what's going to probably be one season, I want Drake May on the field now to get used to the NFL, to get his head in the game, and to have Keenan Allen as a security blanket. And then the following season, okay, you can figure it out if you don't have Keenan Allen, but you already are weathered a little bit and you've seen the storm before, where if you bring in Keenan Allen for a year to catch passes from Jacoby Brissett, not interested in that. Right. Waste of money, waste of talent. So
now I will say I'm probably contradicting my own rules. And one of my rules is professional sports is entertainment and entertain me. And the Patriots would probably be more entertaining in 2024 with Keenan Allen on the field. Mm-hmm. That's the simple reality. They'd probably be a better offense. But there is a little bit of me that is accepting of the fact that this is a multi-year rebuild. This is not a quick fix, and I want them to fix it. And I kind of have to plug my nose and watch whatever the Patriots are going to be in 2024 to get to 2025 and 2026.
Yeah. I want to pull up Danny Stanford's comment here earlier on Twitter when the Ridley thing came out. I said that Ridley's allowed to live with me. He said there might be a cost of living thing. Calvin Ridley's going to come live in my house, and apparently Danny's going to help me cover the rent. So thanks, Danny.
Nice.
Appreciate that one. Yeah. So
wonder if he likes pickle pizza.
Yeah, we'll get him down to Town Spa. We'll see what happens. Get Calvin to Town Spa. Maybe he can come to the Reach Keefe draft show with us. We're gonna eat a couple pies down there. Yeah. So
that'd be cool.
All right. Let's talk tackle, because Tyron Smith is still out there. Jonah Williams is still out there. And this is why I'm still cautiously optimistic, at least on tackle and maybe even wide receiver, because the market hasn't broken yet. Like, the market breaks on quarterback, right? Minshew goes, Brissett goes later. It's a couple DNs go, Danielle Hunter gets signed, and the trades start happening, right? But the market hasn't really broke on tackle yet. I mean, Deion Dawkins got the 3-year extension with Buffalo, but besides that, nothing else has really happened. So where are you? Where are the Patriots, do you think, in the tackle market? Would you rather Jonah Williams? Would they rather Jonah Williams? What do you think Tyron? Like, I can't even get a sense right now on what Tyron Smith would make on the market, frankly. So I'm curious as to if you know anything, if you've heard anything, or just your thoughts on that in general and where they should go from here. Because they need to make left tackle happen. I think. I don't think you can go into the draft like it.
Well, I think either way. I think you probably have to draft one anyway. And
right, yeah.
I haven't heard anything money-wise. I've heard that they do like Tyron Smith. There is interest in Tyron Smith. Jonah Williams is probably the safer guy. Like, Tyron Smith has played less than half the games in the last 4 years. Like, he's been off injured, and usually guys don't get, healthier as they hit their, wherever he is, mid-30s at the offensive line position. So Jonah Williams, and then draft one, because I think we're all a little trigger shy at the tackle spot with just how poorly things have worked out the last couple years, whether it's Isaiah Wynn didn't work out, Calvin Anderson, Riley Reif, like all of these guys. And I could feel like, oh, we signed Tyron Smith on March 15th, and I'm happy. I think that's a good step. You draft a receiver now, and Tyron Smith's hurt on the 4th day of training camp. And you're like, uh-oh, we don't have a tackle now. So, and there's no guarantee Jonah Smith, obviously. Injuries can happen to anyone. They're going to be a little bit of a house of cards potentially at tackle this year.
Oh, don't dub it the house of cards. That's the kiss of death. That's the Andy Hart kiss of death. You saw the corners last year. I tried to push back, and it just didn't work. Yeah.
Right now, they're not even a house of cards because they don't have a left tackle. They just legitimately do not have a left tackle. And you probably, I guess you could get by with Okorafor as a swing tackle. I don't think
like
he's a
him
starter.
Left tackle. I don't like that being floated at all.
I don't either. But as a swing, which like finish a game, maybe start one game kind of guy. Okay. But anything more than that, I don't love that idea. I wish he was a left tackle. I wish he had experience starting at left tackle. That would sort of change the conversation and the narrative. So is there a trade option? You mentioned like trade options at wide receiver. Sometimes we're just not aware of them, not thinking of them. Is there a tackle version? A guy with some experience at left tackle, but a young guy is now overtaking him, and the team I'd be looking that market because I do think they need to add a veteran with experience, whether it's high-end free agent like Smith and Williams or a trade. And I think first 3 picks, either way, I still think you need to draft a tackle. That's a left tackle, which, by the way, people can go over to the Six Rings podcast feed. We posted our tackle breakdown podcast this week, where we sort of delved into that, right tackles, left tackles, guys with upside, different options that might be available. I think you need to draft a left tackle type guy, that type of athlete at some point, whether that's 34, whether that's the Mike Kadlick trade and get an extra pick there on day 2 so you can pick him, whatever, 3rd round, you need a tackle. But I don't know. I've kind of talked myself into, so Weinstab or maybe Winstab says Jonah Williams, please. I've kind of talked myself into that. I was on Tyron Williams for a little bit, but then I'm like, he really gets hurt a lot, and you're playing without a net. Tyron Smith.
No, you're good.
So I think I'm on Jonah Williams now.
I like it too. I mean, frankly, I'll be happy with either one because on one hand, Jonah Williams tells you that you're in it for the long haul. He's young. He was drafted only a couple years ago, first round pick. And the only reason he got pushed out of Cincinnati really was because they were able to upgrade the position with Orlando Brown, right? Like Jonah Williams is still solid and a serviceable left tackle who's going to, again, bring him in, develop him, and hopefully he's here for the long run. Where Tyron Smith, it's a little bit patchwork because, again, the age, the injury concerns are there. But that also tells me that, okay, like you have a legit guy there that's going to protect your quarterback. And then your plan should likely be to, again, bring in that guy at 34, 68, trade up, trade down, what have you, and develop one behind him. So they just, again, I think they need to make a move. I don't think they can take one of the guys me, you, and Shime talked about as like that second tier and just throw him in on week one because I don't know. The only ones I really would want to put in there week one is a guy like Joe Alt and maybe Fuaga, but Fuaga's the right tackle. And they're not going to get Joe Alt. At least I hope not. So yeah, I think it needs to be developmental. I think you need to get Williams or Tyron Smith in here, or like you said, a trade too. A couple of guys have been traded so far. Who was traded? Morgan Moses was traded. He's a right tackle. The guy from Baltimore went back to the Jets to help them out. Give Vice President Aaron Rodgers a right tackle. Did you see that it came out that RFK like now has made a decision?
Oh, I didn't know that.
They didn't say it was Rodgers. They said he's made a decision, but they said that Ace Ventura is out of the running. So it might be Aaron.
And I saw that I get one of those weird emails that Rodgers is the betting favorite on one of those Bet US or whatever websites. And I saw that the website Kennedy Rogers has been purchased or whatever. But I don't really understand how that works. I'd be pissed if I'm a Jets fan.
Me too.
Wait a minute. You were hurt the first year. Now I'm getting myself all lathered up that we're going to the Super Bowl, and you're going to be the effing vice president. Like,
and the other day, I think he said that he wanted to play another like 4 or 5 years. So he's all over the map. Again, you're right. They're probably not going to win. But.
Got no shot to win, but
right.
You're still distracted. And as Rich Keefe said, is Aaron Rodgers going to be on the stage for vice presidential debates? Like
that would be hilarious.
I love it because I love that it screws with the two-party system, that it screws with just sort of like I love that. And this year it's already a farce of a presidential campaign, the two candidates, like the two old coots that we're running it back with. So why not? This is a perfect year for this to happen. But
it throws a wrench into the election, and it also throws a wrench into the Jets, which is also hilarious because
I kind of feel bad for a Jets fan. Like if you're a Jets fan, he's healthy now, you're talking yourself into it again, and he's like what a jackass.
Yeah, he's out of his mind. So all right, let's hit one more before we get out of here. Again, quick hitter today, 6 rings, 1 off. Make sure we got over 3,000 people in here again, so I'm going to tout it again. You're in here. Yeah, you're in here. While you're here, go to the podcast feed. Give us a subscribe. 6 Rings Podcast, Odyssey, WEEI, because downloads, listeners always help. So I know you might be here on Twitter or YouTube or what have you, but give us a subscription too, because you'll get all of our stuff that doesn't necessarily go live if you go over there. So one more thing before we get out of here is J.C. Jackson. According to Jeremy Fowler, J.C. Jackson and the Patriots, there's potentially interest in him returning. Could be a 1-year deal, short money. They cut him to save the cap space and what have you. But if he gets his mentals right and if he gets on track, there might be a chance that he returns. I don't know if I like this. I'll just give my opinion right off the bat because, look, can JC be a great player when he's healthy? Yes. And is it okay to bring in a guy, again, on short money and no risk in the financial business if he does stink and you just got to snip him again? Yes. But this whole culture thing and this whole like bringing back the good guys thing and bringing back the team core aspect thing, like that's not JC Jackson's language. I'm sorry. And you cut Devontae Parker for that reason. And guys like Uche are taking pay cuts and Kendrick Bourne taking pay cuts or, smaller contracts for that reason, for the team. Let's build this thing from the ground up. And look, maybe J.C. Jackson can prove us all wrong and change his attitude, but from what happened last year and from him missing, and again, he does, he was having some mental health issues, and I'm not going to, want to take that lightly, but you also don't need to bring him back, right? You don't need to bring him back. So I just don't know how I feel about it. I would rather, I see in the chat, get Stephon Gilmore, get a guy like that instead. Use Alex Austin, develop him instead on the boundary. Like, I don't know. I don't need JC Jackson back here, but what's it?
Yeah, no, I'm not really interested. I almost never agree with anything Tom Curran says, but this Gilmore idea that he floated last week, I love. I don't like, to me, he's a better version of Brissett for Christian Gonzalez. Like, still can contribute on the field, but can mentor. And I think Gonzalez appears to have some similarities to Gilmore, so I think they might hit it off as sort of a mentor-mentee relationship. And you're right. You got to kind of like tiptoe through the mental health thing, but I don't mean to be disrespectful, but all I can look out for is the New England Patriots and my locker room and my team and my reliability. And you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
So we're not a charity. We're not like Second Chance U, where like you get another chance at your
exactly.
Like, so for the best interest of the New England Patriots, for the best interests of Christian Gonzalez and, any of Austin, like any of these guys that are young and developing, Marcus Jones, I don't know that I want JC Jackson a part of that mix. So no, I don't think, even at almost any cost, been there, done that twice, don't need to do it again kind of thing. So yeah, Gilmore, give me Gilmore. And I know other people are throwing out Adoree Jackson, Kendall Fuller, other veteran options that might be on the open market. Sure, I'd look into those. Yeah, I'm a no dog on JC Jackson.
Adoree Jackson's interesting, and the reason I bring it up is because he's also a really good kick returner. He's good in the special teams game. And I know they just re-signed Jalen Reagor, and it kind of seems like they're going to use him as their kick returner. And I'm fine with that because he was pretty good last year. But if you didn't bring back Jalen Reagor, I'd go with Adoree Jackson because, again, that kick return aspect, and they're going to try and potentially change up the rules there, make kick returns, put him back in the game, make them more exciting. And so that's why there might be a little bit more of a focus on that position moving forward. Kendall Fuller, same thing. I want another cornerback that's going to lock down outside of Christian Gonzalez. And I mean, that's obvious, and everybody wants 2 lockdown corners, but like Gonzalez has this potential and he's great. But we've talked about it on here. That's all it is right now is potential because he's played 3.5 games and then he blew out his shoulder. Like, and it's not going to, I'm not taking anything away from him. I think he's going to be a stud personally. But you can't just rely on that. You have to have a guy who's proven on one side and then have all this potential on the other side, and then it translates and he ends up turning into corner.
Yeah, I know people don't want to hear this, but we're only like a half a step past the way we felt on draft weekend a year ago. Like, we were really excited they got Christian Gonzalez. Right. We loved it. And then I remember mocking that video that Patriots.com put out of him in shorts, like opening up his hips and everybody was like,
oh yeah.
But we're barely ahead of that. He's played a couple games. I like him. I can't say it enough. I like him. I think he's going to be good. But I thought I liked Jonnu Smith, and I thought he was going to be good too. And that didn't. You liked Juju and Mike Gesicki. Like, we all have our likes and thinks, and then reality slaps you in the face, and you're like, well, that didn't go how I thought that was going to go in his year 2. So, yeah, no, I think Christian Gonzalez will be fine. I think he's going to have. What about the safety position in terms of? Is it a foregone conclusion that Kyle Duggar's back? Like, is that just fait accompli? Like,
I don't know if that is something that, I mean, that he doesn't have to wait to sign that until 4 p.m., right? He could have signed that when they
I believe so. Once it's offered, he can sign it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's still a waiting game. Who knows? I would think he's going to come back on it, but
because there's a lot of like Josh Nagor says Justin Simmons is out there. There's a lot of safeties out there.
Yeah.
And as we talk about another guy, correct me if I'm wrong, Miles Bryant has not re-signed yet.
Correct.
He feels like he's another re-signing based on the way they've re-signed virtually everybody that's been a part of this team. And I don't hate it. I don't say that disparagingly. I think he's a good depth guy with some versatility, some kicking game potential, and all of that.
Yeah, he's worth what he's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not a lot. That he might also have to leave $11 million on the table somewhere else to re-sign here on a 1-year deal for very little money.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's that. That's the thought on the Patriots here on this one-off 6.
What's your emotion?
Andy,
Sorry,
you have any more?
But like before we wrap this up, like what's your emotion as the optimistic, positive member of the 6 Rings family to some degree?
Yeah.
What is your emotion as we work our way through now. Actually, the official start of free agency, but a lot has happened.
They still need to do more. They still need to make their splash. So I guess cautiously optimistic that they will do that because they do still have the cap space to make it happen, right? The moves they have made, the retainments in Henry and Bourne and Uche have all been on the cheaper side. And so they've brought back the good players from the 4-13 team. They haven't brought back Mac Jones. They didn't bring back Devontae Parker. Like they've done the right thing internally so far. But it's getting to that time where, look, I don't care. At this point, don't wait on the market. Go set the market because you have the money to set the market. So cautiously optimistic. I think they'll still make it happen. But the longer time goes by, the closer it gets to 4 o'clock with Calvin Ridley, things like that, I'm going to start to get a little bit more pissed off. And I'm still going to get a little bit more anxious that they are just going to do the Mike Giardi and run this thing back to 4-13.
Yeah, I think they'll be picking in the top 10 next year. I think they'll have lower single-digit wins, and I think that's okay. I think they damaged their own selves with their comments. They set expectations that they either couldn't live up to or weren't really wanting to live up to, planning to live up to. I don't know exactly how it all unfolded, but they said burn cash. They said weaponize, and we've seen none of that. And for us to react accordingly is fair, in my opinion.
And I think that's the issue, right? Is that they set the expectation. This isn't us doing it. They literally set it. And they did backtrack. Like, I guess you can give them that. But you got to be careful with those words, as Bill Belichick taught both. And as soon as it goes out the door, they start opening their mouths, and then they can't live up to it. So You're right. I don't disagree.
MJW says, cautiously optimistic Kadlick has me at DEFCON 5.
That's okay. 2 hours and 21 minutes until the official start. So hopefully they get some things done once everything can become official. So that's going to do it for One-Off Wednesday here on WEEI. 6 Rings, Odyssey Sports. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe to the show and to the WEEI YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at 6RingsPod, at Jumbo Hart, at Mike Kadlick. We're going to keep keeping you updated. We might be back tomorrow in some form or fashion. I know you're on the radio, but might try and do another one if things, continue to, or not continue to, but things go in an upward direction for the Patriots. So keep it here, keep it tuned in, and we will talk to you next time. Until then, I guess I'll use the Fitzy sign off with Go Pats, and we will talk to you next time. See ya.